Welcome to Navigating Life After 40, the podcast that's all about helping women navigate this exciting and sometimes challenging phase of life. I'm your host, Roni J, and I'll be here sharing some of my own personal experiences, chatting with experts and a few friends, and also providing some practical advice and support to help you live your best life after 40. Let's get started.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Navigating Life After 40. I am your host, Roni, and I am here today with Brandi Hudson. Hi, Brandi. Thank you for being here today.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
All right, so we are going to talk a lot about this big word that so many people really kind of have, I would say, a bit of a struggle with and a bit of a struggle understanding. So I look forward to taking a deep dive into this word happiness today and having just a better understanding of it and what that looks like for individuals, especially women in midlife, because we get to this point and for many women, they are no longer experiencing happiness and they feel like life just kind of has to just go downhill from here. And so there's still an opportunity to be happy in your life. And just because you're in midlife, it doesn't mean that life stops. So can't wait for us to dive in and have this conversation. Digging into your past a little bit, you have had a successful career in corporate America. And then you shifted your focus into helping women cultivate these authentic, happy lives. What inspired this transition?
Yeah, I mean, my own life was the inspiration really for the journey that I'm on now. When I take a look back at my life, and I was born and raised in Detroit to teenage parents, and they really wanted the absolute best for me. And from their viewpoint, the absolute best was for me to like always get great grades, always to, be part of every club, mission, etc. driven work, for me to go to the absolutely best schools. And then when I graduated, to have the best job, to be a director by a certain age, a manager, a VP, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then get married, have a kid, right? They weren't really big pushers on those two things, but that was kind of like the story. And fast forward, Roni, I had really done all those things at a pretty high level. And I took a step back and I was like, but to what end? Right. So you can have all of these things. And I think our parents' generation really believed that those achievements and those accolades would translate to happiness. So what I teach people is that ultimately everything that you're seeking to achieve in life, it's because you fundamentally think it'll make you happy. And that midlife sadness that you touched on in the opening comes from the fact that Black women especially, but many humans kind of achieve all the things that they're looking for. And they're like, but where's the joy that people told me I was going to get on the other side? And then when that doesn't come, it's such a letdown.
Yeah, I
And
totally
so,
agree with that.
and so I took a step back and I said, like, well, what if we flip this on its head? What if I just prioritize being happy and then see how my life translates? And what I realized is that the unintended consequence of happiness is that you actually have all the success that you're looking for. And so then you can have both of those things. And that's why I really help people understand that, like, the focus on happiness isn't at the cost of achievement, of purpose, of fulfillment. It is actually in service to those things.
Nice. And I like how you chose to kind of flip the script a little bit and said, I'm going to focus on happiness. And then let's see what happens from here. Let's see how are these other things going to, I know I'm going to probably dive a little bit into our conversation forward, but how these other things start to really manifest and show up into your life. And so I really like that because you're right. We go to school. Or really, we do what our parents encourage us to do, go to school, get the job, do all of the things. And you can do all of these things, but deep down inside, are you really happy? Are you just doing this for your parents? Or are you doing this for yourself? Or really just because that's just what we've always heard, go to school, do this, do that. And we had the blueprint laid out for us. We followed the blueprint. But for many of us, they're still like, I'm still not happy.
Yeah,
I'm still
there's
not
something
happy.
missing.
Yeah, there's something missing.
And the one thing our parents didn't teach us just because they didn't know any different, is that we really deserve to be happy, that it is our birthright, and that
Mhm.
like happiness is like natural to who we are. We are born these like joyous, beautiful humans, and then we're trying to do all the things to get the very thing that is intrinsic to us, right? Like it's not natural to have like a fancy job or a fancy degree. Like that's the stuff you have to work for. But when we step back and realize like, oh, like I just get to be happy. It is my
Yeah.
birthright, and you're going to have to work for it because we've moved so far away from it. But then when you get back to it, you see that it just is there. It is like part of the fabric of your being.
Yeah, I love that. And my question to you is next, because as you're talking about happiness, so many people are probably like, well, what is happiness? What does that look like for, I don't want to say the average person, but what is the definition of happiness as you see it for yourself, for your clients? How do you present that?
Yeah. And I try not, so I am not Brene Brown or an expert on emotions, but I help people understand, right? Like that there's basically high vibration emotions, happiness, joy, love, peace. And I've kind of like encapsulated those into like happiness, right? Like, but it really is like staying in those high vibration emotions, those emotions that help propel you forward. And then there's the dense emotions, anger, shame, fear, anxiety, worry, right? And so I just help my clients really think about like, we want to be in those high vibration emotions as often as possible. And we oftentimes believe that the way to achieve what we're trying to achieve is actually through those low vibration emotions. So we think like, oh, if I worry about it, then I'm going to put more effort into it and then I'm going to get it. Or we're like, okay, I'm a little bit anxious, but that's okay. I do well when I'm anxious. But it's really because we don't actually know the other side. And so I just want people to be in this space where they feel expansive. They feel like they're moving towards something, that their emotions don't feel like they're holding them back. And from that place, we align much more easily to what we're seeking, right? So if what you are seeking is, let's say you want a new house, right? And you're like, oh, when I have a new house, I'm going to be so excited. But you spend all your time energetically thinking, what if I exhaust all my savings? Will I ever have enough money? Will the interest rates ever go down? Like, if you're like spending all your time in this worry and anxious feelings, then you're so far apart from where you're trying to go. And so I let everyone define happiness for themselves, but it really is being in those high vibration like emotions, because when you're around someone that's happy, you feel really connected to them, right? You feel drawn to them. You're like, oh, I want what she's having.
Yeah.
And turns out everything in the world is like that. Money wants to be near happy people. New houses want to be near happy people. New jobs want to be near happy people. Like, so that energetically is going to draw to you the life that you're seeking. And so I just teach people like, yo, let's be in that space and let's figure out what's actually precluding you from being in that space. Cause it's simple, but it's not always easy.
Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of the worrying that people are doing, which I know I'm guilty of that. I'm a worrier.
Yeah.
And I was not always a worrier, but the older I've gotten, I've become a
Hmm.
worrier. And it's a lot of the things that you mentioned in terms of what if this happens? We're always worrying about the what ifs, right? Like
Yeah.
the what ifs, but we're not thinking about, well, what if it actually works out? We're focused on like the negative part of those things. And I just did a podcast on this where I touched on it a little bit, and it was about imposter syndrome. Of course, we know that's about thinking you're a fraud and things like that. But a lot of that comes again with those negative emotions because we're so focused about the negative outcome of things that we never take the time to say, but what if this does work out? What if this does look differently? How can this look different for me? How can I be happy? How can I attract these things? Because we hear a lot about manifestation, and so many people don't understand truly what that is. And I know for a while when it first became popular, even I was like, why is everybody talking about manifestation? Because social media, they'll come up with these words and then it's just the buzzword at the moment, and everybody is talking about it. Oh, I'm manifesting this and I'm manifesting that. And I got a little annoyed with it because although I understand what you're trying to say, I was looking at it from a different lens. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure other people probably were also probably listening, probably like, yeah, I probably was too. But I was looking at it from a different lens and not more so from the negative. I've just always been where if it's something that you want, and this is just my spiritual side, I pray about it, I write it out, and this is what I ask for. But in what you're mentioning as well is somewhat similar, except you're identifying what happiness looks like for you. So and I'm not sure if this is something that you do with your clients, maybe have them write it out. Like in a perfect world, what does your life look like? What does happiness look like for you? Because it makes me think about begin with the end in mind. In a
Yeah.
perfect world, what does happiness look like for you? And so that's what comes up for me when you're talking, which leads me into your process and the core principles that you
Yeah.
use, which is BASE, BASE. Can you share and walk us through like the details of that and how
Yeah.
you use that with your clients?
I'd love to. Can I respond first to a couple of the things you
Yeah.
said? Okay, I was taking a couple notes. So one, what I really tell people about worry, and I'd love to offer this to you, Ronnie, is there's this idea, people are like worrying. And I'm like, okay, so you're going to worry about something. And then if it doesn't happen, you're going to be like, man, I spent a lot of time worrying about something that didn't happen, right? So
Yeah.
we all know that, right? Like that's obvious. But what people sometimes don't sit and think about is if I worry about it and it does happen, I'm still going to be upset. The worry doesn't actually change anything. Like
Yeah.
you're either going to worry and still be upset, mad, sad, angry, whatever, if the outcome that you were trying to prevent happens anyway. Or if it doesn't happen, you're going to be like, man, I wasted my time. So either way, it's a waste of time. Worrying is the ultimate waste of time. And so there are these things that we can put into place to help people reduce their amount of worry. And then the manifestation part, I agree with you. I do not like the word manifestation. And I used to be so against it because people think about manifestation in terms of things, right? Like a husband, a house, a car, a partner, a new job, a promotion, an amount of money, right? Instead of thinking that creating the entirety of my life, I've manifested everything. If I trip down the steps, I manifested that. If I get a new job, I manifested that. And so I like to tell people like you're co-creating your life and the extent to which you can use your brain and your emotions. Those are the two things that create your life, period. So if you can use your brain and your emotions to your own benefit, then you're going to create the life that you want. You're going to manifest this beautiful life, and then you're going to be kind of living these beautiful moments. Sometimes what happens is people manifest things, but then all the moments in between feel heavy because they don't realize the entirety of my life I'm creating. And when I think about
Hmm.
creating the entirety of my life, I'm actually going to be focused more on how I feel in the moments, more on how I feel when I'm talking to Ronnie, when I'm hugging my kid, and less on the house, the car, the job, because those are like so finite. Like, how many
Yeah.
houses will you own in a lifetime? Not that
Yeah.
many, right? But you're going to live many, many, many minutes of every
Yeah.
day. And you want that time to feel expansive and beautiful. And so when we think about co creating the entirety of our life, then we can be in this much more beautiful space. And I love what you said about writing, right? Pray, write, ask is absolutely true because really if we use the word manifestation, writing something in the world is the first step of manifestation. It is getting it out of your head and into the world. You see it as part of the world
Mhm.
because you put it on paper. You're no longer dreaming about it. So it's that first step of manifestation and it's so beautiful, right? So you pray to God for guidance that you're asking for the right things, then you write it down and then you right? For Holy Spirit, whomever you believe in to help you take the right actions to bring it to pass. And that is like surefire way to live a really beautiful life. And then the
Yeah.
next step in releasing the worry is to know that whatever happens is in your best and highest good, right? Because the worrying comes from really not trusting that your prayers are going to be answered.
You are so right. Because when you pray, you're not supposed to worry. And
No.
as you were speaking, you also made me think about I took this big board exam recently back in July. I studied and studied and studied for it. But after I took it, I'll never forget today, I took it and I called my friend on the phone. I said, what in the world kind of exam is this? Because she took it years prior. After I got through talking to her, I said, I'm just going to give it to God. Whatever happens, happens. And I'm just going to trust that he's going to take it from there. And if I pass it, I always give all credit to him. But whatever happens, it's in his hands. I cannot worry about this. And I did not worry about it for 6 weeks. And then this past Monday, one of my colleagues reached out and they said, hey, did you get your results? And I said, what results? And she said, to the test. And I said, oh, I forgot about them because I did not worry about that situation. I gave it and put it in the right hands of who it belongs to. And I just moved on. I was like, I can't let that test get to me. It was hard. It's supposed to be hard. That's the way they designed it. And they admitted that they do that on purpose. And when I got it back Monday, it was like, oh, I passed. I was excited.
Obviously.
Yeah, I was excited, but I was like, I gave it to the right hands. I was just, I can't worry about this.
Yeah.
And as you were talking, it made me think, how often can I just use that same level of thinking? Because I don't always do that.
Every day.
Yeah, and I should do that
day.
every day. Like, okay, I did this. Okay, God, I'm going to give it to you, and I'm going to go and focus on the next thing that I need to do and not let this bother me. But that's what came up for me. And you're right. And so now I have to take that same concept and just apply it on a daily basis and stop worrying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. For you. And yeah, I'd love to answer your actual question, which was about the base process. So the base process is, when I took a step back and made my first initial shift to prioritizing happiness, joy, love, peace, mostly peace over all those dense emotions, I was like, okay, how can I actually get there? And then when I felt like I was there, I was like, okay, looking back, what was it? And the first thing is to the B, I call it base, BASE, because it's foundational to the life that you want to live. And so the B is what beliefs do you have, right? Do you believe that you get to be happy? Do you believe it's always going to be hard for Black women? Do you believe that nobody's here to support you? Do you have these beliefs that even if you can find evidence of them being true, right? Because I don't want to debate with people systemic challenges in the world. What I want to help people understand is even if it's true, are those beliefs in service to the life you want to live? Because something can be true and doesn't mean you have to focus on it all the time. So I'm not here to negate the challenges that we see in the world. I am here to say that there have been many exceptions and you too get to be an exception. And I believe that is what God wants for all of us, to really be these examples of possibility. And when we're an example of possibility, we focus instead of what we want and how do we shift those beliefs. And then the alignment, which I talked about a little bit earlier, what you're seeking, you think it's going to give you these high vibrations, this beautiful, lovely life, but you're constantly worried and anxious and you're just too far emotionally from where you want to be. And so you have to be in that energy that you got in, right? Roni, you were like, oh, I'm going to release that. You didn't even think about it anymore. You had this knowing, right? And so that knowing puts you in alignment with the outcome. And so I knew the minute you started that story that of course you passed the test, right? Because you did the thing that you had to do. So you prayed, you asked for a positive outcome, and then you did the work. And then that's all you need to do. And then you know that your success is inevitable. And when your success is inevitable, you don't worry about it. And then the S is about self-awareness. How often can you catch yourself? Okay, I know where I need to be. And when I'm off track, I'm not hard on myself, but I just make those small shifts, those small adjustments to get back on track. And the self-awareness is really taking full responsibility for your life. I started talking about my parents and what they wanted for me. I could spend my whole life, my parents were awesome, but I could spend my whole life being well, I'm this way because my mama did this and my dad did this, right? Or I'm this way because my boss doesn't see how great I am, or whatever. You could spend your whole life doing that. But the self-awareness is really knowing that you came to this planet with everything you needed inside of you, be the best version of you. And that you don't need any specific person to act in any specific way to have the life that you want. And so being in this place of victimization and blame aren't in service to you because
Yeah.
that person doesn't care. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like maybe your mama will be like, oh, baby, I'm sorry. But like at the end of the day, mama's living her life and you are the only one who can live yours. So when you're in that self-awareness of like, how can I make micro adjustments? How can I control my own destiny without being outwardly focused on other people? You're in this really beautiful place. I think it's the most challenging and the most rewarding part of the process. And then the E is emotional resilience. Every human comes to this planet in this lifetime to experience some level of adversity. And some of us, especially, Black people, have adversity that's been passed down across the generations, right? And so we have to take these really powerful steps to develop emotional resilience where we know that we've had a tough go of it in the past, and we also release that emotional density of those stressful moments, for lack of a better word, sometimes traumatic moments. We release the emotions of those, but we keep the memories, because when we keep the memory, that is wisdom. And we take that wisdom. And that's why we oftentimes see, from my vantage point, that people who've had really challenging adversity and they can develop that emotional resilience, they have the most amazing outcomes. They have these
Yeah.
really beautiful lives because they've really taken the part of those challenging times that is in service to their highest good, and they've left the rest behind. And when you do those four things, I guarantee you'll have a big, beautiful life.
I love that. And you taking me back a little bit to like my previous work as I don't like to really say it on the show much, but
Let us know. Let us in.
previous no work as a therapist. I used to be a therapist. And so you made me think about just the limiting beliefs that come up and how a lot of times we hold on to that and we don't know how to really move beyond them and let them go. So that's really what really started to come up when you were talking. I said, okay, this sounds like limiting beliefs and
Yeah.
trying to really do the work to change those. And this is right on point, this conversation, because so many things happened this week that just is in alignment with what we're talking about today. And I was actually talking to my mom, and my mom, please don't listen to this episode. I'm going to talk about you a little bit. But my mom loves to talk about her past and stays in the past. And so I was having a conversation with her while I was on a walk a few days ago. And I was like, well, Mom, I said, let me tell you about this message I heard. And it was a message that I tuned into at church online. And I was telling her for the month of September, we're really focused on like these seeds of unforgiveness and how to let those go. And a lot of it has to do with the past. And I share with her how, when you're still having the same reaction to the past, you haven't let that go. You haven't fully put that where you needed to. I know you probably said, oh, I prayed about it, I did. But my mom was like, well, I still got to talk about it. I said, but you have to talk about it all the time, which means you're still holding on to it. And I've noticed that this has held you back in a lot of areas where I know you could be great in. And so it made me think about that conversation as well as you were breaking down that base process and how a lot of times we do things in our past, we hold on to them and they prevent us from moving forward. So yeah, great explanation. I love that.
Yeah.
And it stuck with me, and I'm going to definitely go back and listen to this again, and I'm going to be writing those things down because I think those are very important steps and how we definitely need to like identify what those limiting beliefs are. And then we really have to do the work to change it because, yeah, things can happen in our past, and we probably went through things with our parents and other people. But as adults, it's our responsibility to put in the work to change and to do better and to create the life that we ultimately want to have for ourselves.
And deserve to have,
Yeah, and
like,
deserve.
yeah. I mean, you're such an amazing daughter because I feel like you positioned it very kindly, but also like lovingly for your mom. And I tell people all the time, right? The more we focus on the past, we're just bringing the past into our present moment.
Yeah.
And so if you had, and that works really well, right? This is why we see people who've had a lot of success in the past. If they focus on the past, they just create this beautiful kind of like domino effect where there's just more and more and more. So you can focus on the good things that have happened in the past and bring those into the present. But for people who've had challenging lives, when you focus on the past and you bring that into the present, now you're having a domino effect in the reverse direction, which is the very thing you didn't want. And so I tell people
Yeah.
all the time, release the past, only live in the present moment and prepave your future. You prepave the future through what you said earlier, pray, write, ask, but you just live in this present moment. Like if your mom is on this walk or you're on this walk with her, like the present moment is really good.
Yeah.
And the only
Yeah.
way we make the present moment not feel good is by talking about the past,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
And asking people, how do you feel when you talk about that? Because life coaching, people are always, they're in therapy, like you said, and then they come to me and every therapist is different, but there's still
Mhm.
large number of therapists that spend a lot of time talking about the past and sorting the past. And so they come to me and
Mhm.
I'm like, so I think we can agree you understand the past. You are a really smart human. You can dissect it 50 different ways. But now let's just let it go. Let her steps to it, right? I'm not just saying just let it go because that's oversimplification, but we take action to release the past and
Yeah,
just take the wisdom because rehashing it, like I mentioned, only brings that into our now. And we don't want it in the now.
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know in your work,
Mhm.
are there any common beliefs that you see often with women who are in midlife that keeps them from living that life of greater fulfillment for themselves?
Yes. Yes. A couple things that I hear a lot. One, I hear, which it's like nails on a chalkboard. I hear people say, it is what it is. And I'm like, you just resolved to let life take over and you're no
Yes.
longer in control of your destiny. Like I really want to just kind of shake people in a loving way when they're like, it is what it is though. And I'm like, no, it isn't. It is what you've made it and you have the power to make it different. It is not what it is, right? I teach people that there are three legs of a stool in life and everything fits into one of these legs. So one is career, money, abundance, financial abundance. The second leg of the stool are relationships, both platonic, familial, and romantic. And then the third leg of your stool is going to be health. And that can be anywhere from beauty, weight to actual like disease health. So everything is in one of those three buckets that you'll come. And I hear things about all the buckets. I generally spend most time in the financial and the relationship. So like the finance, I hear money doesn't grow on trees, more money, more problems. I'm like, baby passed away forever ago. Y'all still holding
Yes.
on. And I'm like, there are bad people who are poor and there are bad people who are rich and there are good people who are rich and there are good people who are poor. Like there is no association. Money has no energy of its own. You attract it to you. But if you believe that money isn't good and that money causes problems for you, then you're going to have less money because nobody, like even the guy in jail, like thinks of themselves as a bad person. So you're not going to attract to you something that you think isn't aligned with how you see yourself. So if your identity is that, oh, I'm a good person, but money, lots of money goes to people who aren't good. Now, all of a sudden, you can't attract money because you've created this wall between you and money where money is going to the people with problems and I don't want any more problems or oh, rich people aren't good. Okay, well, now you won't have it, right? So having these views about money, these beliefs about money, when money is just a resource and
That's it.
you use it as you see fit in alignment with your own morals and values and ethics and not with anyone else's, then from that space, you can attract money. And we need more really good people to have more resources because no matter what anyone says, that is a resource, a currency that shifts the world. Jay-Z said, I can't help the poor if I'm one of them. So we need to be focused on accumulating resources, not as a priority over other things, but just not creating and having these beliefs that preclude them from coming to us for the good work that we are doing. Right. And so that's what I hear about money. Relationships, I hear there's no good men out there. All the men are less educated than me. They don't make as much money as me. I'm like, girl,
Yes.
like you only need one man. So first of all, there's 8 billion people in the world. And if you think that God did not put one dude out here for you, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's just like crazy
Right.
to even think that you believe that. Your brain is so powerful that it wants you to be right. And your brain is doing everything in its power to help you be right. And while you said earlier, like turn it over to God, what we can't do is contradict what God wants for us and think that God's just going to constantly override us. Like sometimes you get lucky. I say when I was younger, I think this is my purpose. This is where I'm meant to be. So I think I got a lot of things that I'm grateful for that maybe I wasn't in alignment to, but God's not in the business. There are these laws of the universe that we've been given as a way of living. So when we turn it over to him, that's one thing. But when we're like, oh, this is how we think it should be, you're not just going to end up getting what you want. You've got to be in alignment with what God wants for you and then take the actions to it. And then you're co-creating with source, with spirit, with God to get what you want. But you can't be fighting. You just won't end up with it. Right.
Yes.
And then around health, I mean, I get all kinds of things like, well, my mom eats like this and my mom is overweight and everybody in my family. Okay, but what does that have to do with you? Right. So yes, I hear it all. And in middle age, this is when people start believing it's true. And you believe it's true, but you've made it true. It isn't universally true. I could go ask a million people and they wouldn't all say the same thing. So it's not true. It's just what you believe to be true.
Pretty true.
Right? Like, it's true that the sky is blue. That is true.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like maybe it'll rain today. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to really step back from our beliefs and ask ourselves, is this 100% true? And if everyone wouldn't agree, like every sane person wouldn't agree, then it's not a fact. It's just something you have taught yourself to believe. And the greatest part about that is you have the power to shift it. You have the power to think differently, to believe differently, and then to have a better outcome.
Yes. I love you are preaching today. I'm ready to throw my hands up. You are preaching because a lot of our beliefs are what really keep us from living happy lives. You are definitely on track. And it's really, as you mentioned, is this true? Is this what we're thinking right now? Is it true? And like you said, we have these millions of people in the world. And if the millions of sane people would not agree with you, then that means that it is not true. And as you were talking about all of the things that you hear women say, that it is what it is. I don't think we understand how powerful that statement is and what we are creating when we say that. To us, it's one of those things where it is what it is. Like, I ain't worry about it. But you are going to worry about it. Oh, that's the way it's supposed to be. But it's not supposed to be that way. The things that we hear and we pick up and we start to use those same words, and words are powerful. And we do not know what we're saying when we're saying the things that we hear other people say.
Yeah. And what we're ultimately creating.
What we're creating. And we have to change the narrative in what we say, so that our lives can be different.
Yeah. And
So
we have
this
to be
is
so
powerful.
intentional about it, right?
Yeah.
Like we have to be intentional because you're right. You said earlier, people will be like, oh, I don't care about that. You care deeply. That's why you've been talking about it for 5 minutes and then ended with, I don't care. And so just knowing like, oh, let's be really intentional about our lives. Like I said there's all these moments that we're living. And if we live those moments with intention and are purposeful about the inputs that we make, then we're going to have those beautiful outputs.
Love that because it is so true. But when having these conversations, that's when I know for me, it's like you really see it from a different angle. And some of you guys are probably talking about what you as a therapist, how you not know this? I know it. One thing to know, I would say this, it's almost like doctors. Sometimes, when you're in your own profession, you can be the biggest hypocrite. You know what to do. And you don't necessarily do the thing that you know that you're supposed to do. But it's so amazing that we're having this conversation. And I'm just like, wow, yes, this is what I need to do. This is what I need to work on for myself. This is what I've noticed that has come up for me. How can I change this language that I've probably said 1,000 times or more because I am speaking something else into my life and things are showing up in the word I don't want to say, manifesting themselves in my life in a certain way that can be a lot differently. So I love that.
Yeah.
I love
The
that. And I'm
last one
just
I
kind
want
of
to tell
sitting
you,
with it.
I just thought about the one I hear the most is, and this is like after someone's been my client or with like a really close friend, we'll be talking and they'll say something. And then I'll reflect it back to them. So what I heard you say was, and then they'll immediately say, and this is, I think, the most challenging thing for your own advancement is they'll say, oh, I didn't mean that. And that is tricky because that's like your ego trying to keep you small, right? Because if you keep saying the same thing, but then your conscious brain, which is only 4 to 6% of your brain, it's your subconscious where all the
Yeah.
beliefs live. So if your conscious brain jumps in and says, I don't believe that, well, because you said it and you said it with such ease, right? And so really having the self-awareness to be like, I probably do believe that if I said it and not dismissing it because then you can't evolve from where you are.
So true. A lot of women, they still feel stuck. How can they really get into alignment since that is such a important piece of the process? How can their lives really get into alignment with who they ultimately want to be?
Yeah. So a couple things, like one, always offer to people if it feels challenging, are you sure? Do you have clarity around who you want to be? Do you know beyond a shadow of a doubt? Like, I know this is my purpose in life.
Yeah.
I know that I was put here to do this work, right? I know it is resonant with so many women, and I know that this is why God put me on the planet, right? To help people realize their fullest potential. And so you want to be in that place and know that you have a good reason for it, because sometimes our goals are externally driven. And if your goals are externally driven, you'll never, ever get in true alignment with them. You might do well, but other parts of that three-legged stool are going to fall apart because you're putting a disproportionate amount of energy to doing something that isn't meant for you, that doesn't come easy for you, right? Because what you're meant to do and be in this lifetime will ultimately get to this point of ease. It just shows up for you. So that's one part of alignment, just knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt it's what you're meant to do. And then how do we get into alignment with it? Is we have to work every day to be the person who already has the life that we want. So you have to feel it in advance, right? So right now, right here, while I am on this podcast with you, I already feel like the person who will ultimately have a book and be on a really big stage and sharing this message with millions and millions of people, right? And today we're going to share it with thousands of people, and that's okay. But I showed up as both of those people today. I know that now. And I tell people all the time, I recently posted a reel about it. Like, Michael Jordan always knew he was Michael Jordan. Serena Williams always knew, like, you knew later he was Michael Jordan. You knew later Serena Williams was Serena Williams, but they knew in their soul in advance. The person doesn't realize they're famous when they're famous. They always knew they were famous. And then later, the rest of us found out. So the alignment comes from knowing that you are living your soul's purpose. And if that mission or purpose is meant to affect whatever it is meant to impact or do, you feel that in advance, right? So I remember when I was in corporate America, they used to always say, dress for the job that you, right? So I think we have to know who we are in order for other people to see it. So we're trying to show up as the person that we want them to see us as, instead of doing the internal work to make sure you see yourself as that person. You know that you're that person, because the world is only reflecting back to you what you believe. Now, is it true that society has created these tropes and these like ideas of who we are and what we look like? Absolutely. Is it also true that oftentimes we take that identity on? So the first step is to release that identity and be that is not who I am, and I won't let people put me in that box. But you have to believe that deeply. Because if you start to believe like the only way I'm going to get ahead at work, and this is me, it's like I have to be really hard on people and no one's going to give me a second chance. So I'm not going to give other people a second chance. And I used to be like, it's either going to be me or them, and it's not going to be me. I had all these thoughts in my head, right? And so then how do I show up in the world? I showed up as a person who was really successful, but was really challenging. But that's who I was. I can say that's like who they wanted me to be, but that's how I was showing up, because that's how I thought that I got to the end goal of success. And did it work? Of course, it worked, because my brain was like, this is how you'll be successful. So I did the things, and then I was successful. And then I was like, great, that I was right. But there was other ways to do that. And later in my career, I was able to shift that. And so you have to make sure that you're not just spending your energy saying, well, this is who the world thinks I am. And actually asking yourself, but who do I think I am? Who do I know I am? Who do I want to be? And what work am I willing to put in to be that person? And then know that's how the world will see you. Like when I started doing this work, one time I was sitting in a hotel, and this one, and at the Fontainebleau in Miami, if anyone's ever been there, it's a huge lobby. And this woman came all the way across the lobby, and she just said to me, I want you to know you have the most beautiful energy. And the reason God sent her across the room is to remind me that the work that I was doing was working, and not to stop. Because people can see you, even if they aren't adjacent to you, because your energy just flows. So we think that we have to put on a costume so other people can see us as soft and other people can see us as this or that, but we just have to be it. Just be it, and spend all your energy on being that person, and then everyone will see it. Yeah. It's inevitable. I was once, and I'll keep this one short. I was on a board, and a gentleman was announcing all the board members, and he announced there was 5 of us that were new to the board, and he forgot to say something to announce one other younger woman, and she came up to me and was like, well, he forgot me. And I said, and we'd been having a conversation, so I didn't say this out of the blue, and I said, offer to you that he overlooked you because you oftentimes are overlooking you. And that's what is happening in the world. The things that are happening are just reflecting. So if you don't have a lot of confidence, you don't show up in the space, you don't believe you belong there, then you're going to start to be overlooked. And you're going to oftentimes be upset with him. Now, is it his fault? Yes. Like it was his job to remember. Did it happen because energetically the space that you're in and what you believe about yourself? Also, yes. And which of those two things can you change? Only the part about you. So spend all your energy changing you, and then put yourself in spaces where people respect who you've become. And then you're in this beautiful alignment with the universe, with what's meant for you.
I love that. Listen, this has been a master class.
Thank you.
It has. Because it's one thing to know it, as I mentioned earlier, it's one thing to know it, and it's another thing to do it. And then to sit here and just really have this conversation about just some of the very things that I have been even trying to work on for myself, and having someone sitting here with me face to face saying, hey, this this is what you do. This is why this is happening. This is how you show up. This is a process. This is how you do the work. My question is, because for a lot of women, their life throws us lemons, right? How can women maintain high vibration emotions, even when days when things are tough? Because there are going to be some challenges, and I'm sure those who are listening are like, how can I expect to stay in this type of energy when I'm having a bad day, when life throws me this lemon? I mean, we hear, life throws you lemons, make lemonade, right? We hear that a lot, but how can women maintain these high vibrational emotions and this energy during those tough times?
Yeah, I think I was on a live earlier this week and someone asked me a similar question. She said she felt like she was going through like a tough time. So I offered her two things, and I'll offer your listeners the same too. Is one, if you're not already in a tough time, let's just start a beautiful gratitude practice where you are every day. So I have a 7-year-old, and since he's been like old enough to talk, he was a late talker, but since he's been old enough to talk, we've been going through what is he really grateful for. And when my husband walks in the door and maybe he gets annoyed by it, I'll be like, what was the best thing that happened to you today? And so really training our brain to focus on the good parts of life, because what we focus on, we draw to us, right? And so when we think about gratitude, I want to think about it as a gift. So it's a gift, Roni, that you have me on your show today. I'm very grateful that you thought that I should be here. Now, if I never say that, or when we're done, I never send you a thank you, you might be like, well, did Brandi like it? And you might not feel any kind of way towards me, but you would never invite me back, or you may not tell your friends who have a podcast, like, oh, like Brandi, like enjoys being on podcasts. We had this good energy and she was so grateful to be there. Right. And that's how the world is. So if you're not telling God every day the positive things that are happening to you that you're grateful for them, then they don't know what to send you, because you're spending all your energy focused on the dense things. And now you're going to get more of that. And that's when people are like, well, I'm getting all the lemon. And I have so many lemons. I don't have any sugar. I don't have any water. I just got lemon. I can't even make no lemonade, right? So you want to like be in this space. And I tell people, it's for the big things, but it's for the little things. Like, I'm grateful that I got to have a conversation with my mom while I was walking. I'm grateful that when my son wakes up, he runs in my room and wants to hug me. And he goes, Mommy, can we do what we do best? And I love that that's what he thinks cuddling with me is. And what's our favorite part, right? Or I'm grateful that my husband always kisses me when walks in the door. So just like the little things, not waiting until you have a kid or a job. So that's the first part about how do we direct our life. And then the second part, if you feel like you're like kind of in a bad place and you're trying to get out of it, I want you to do this. All right, everybody get a pen and paper. I want you to wake up every day and I want you to write out what your day is going to look like, what your ideal day is going to look like, down to the minute, right? Like, I'm going to call an Uber and it's going to be there in 2 minutes. I'm going to walk into work and the coffee's already going to be made and my boss is going to be happy to see me. I am going to get a call from my boyfriend when I usually have to initiate the call. I'm going to get whatever you want. I'm going to get on the scale and I'm going to have lost 1 pound, right? I want you to very clearly write out how you want your day to be, because then you're going to start expecting it to go. Now, I don't want you to write one day and be like, that did not work. I want you to make a commitment to write out how you want your days to be for a month, because you have to rewire your brain. We have these neural pathways in our brain, and right now they're wired to invite dense things into our lives. And in order to rewire them, we're in our 40s, so we've wired them this way for a long time. In order to rewire them, we have to make a long-term commitment. So get up every day and write what you want your life to be like, and then expect it to be the way you wrote it. And then at the end of the day, give thanks for everything on that list that showed up the way you wanted it to. And if you do that and your life doesn't change, I would be so surprised. The other thing that everyone can start, which tends to have a longer tail, but is the most important thing you can do, especially if you have no money to do anything else, is to meditate. If you can learn how to clear your brain and to shift your brain waves, then you will have this big, beautiful life. That's going to take a little bit longer for some people, especially if they have brains that spin a lot. But even if you can clear it for 20 seconds, just like, oh my gosh, 20 seconds, I got it. That's amazing. So give gratitude, be grateful for the part that worked. Don't stop meditating and say, I can never get it. But we take small steps forward. If we think about the last 40 years, what got us here are the choices over the moments. And what will shift are different choices over these next moments. But we can't think that we're going to upheaval 40 years of life in 4 days. So we have to make a long-term commitment to a shift.
Yeah, I love that. Really being intentional is what comes to mind for me about making the changes necessary so that you can live a happy and fulfilling life, and operating from a place of gratitude, because it opens up different doors and it shifts your mindset. And I noticed that was a practice I started, I think it was a couple of years back. I would write it before I went to bed, like 5 things that I was grateful for that day. And of course, I stopped. So I'm guilty and I'm going to start back. I'm going to start back today. Because this conversation has been so wonderful and helpful for me. And I'm sure just for those who are listening as well. I definitely appreciate what you're doing to help change the lives of individuals and help them see like you can operate from a place of high vibrational energy on a daily basis. But it's all about really shifting your mindset, changing those beliefs and those things that you have been taught. As you mentioned, we have spent 40 plus years, getting all of these things. It makes me think about weight loss. And when you hear the trainer say, it's not going to happen overnight. Like, it took you a minute to get here and to gain all of this weight. Now you got to put in the work to get the weight off, and it's not going to fall off overnight. You got to really be intentional, and you have to show up and you have to do the work. And I think that is one of the struggles that so many people have, is they do the work or they start and they don't finish. Like in my case with writing the gratitudes down every night. And it's really being intentional. And I also look at it as a form of self-care. I'm always encouraging people, listen, take 20, 30 minutes to practice self-care, exercise, move your body. And now my goal going forward is to also encourage people to add a little bit more time to that. Take an additional 5, 10 minutes to meditate, write down your day, command your day. Like, I love that. And to really be intentional about the things that you want. And that is going to help you show up in a different way. Listen, I would love to invite you back again for another episode, because this is amazing. As we wrap up here, are there any final thoughts that you have for our audience? And also, how can they follow you to learn more about you? And I'll also post those details in the show notes as well.
I appreciate that. I want to leave with this final thought, because I get on here, right? And I give advice and guidance, and it can sometimes come across like that I have solved the day, and I haven't, So I think, and I'm offering this to you too, Roni, I want us all to have grace with ourselves. I don't meditate every day. There are some days I forget to say all the things that I'm grateful for. I don't harp on that though, right? Because I'm a human and I'm doing the best I can, and you're doing the best you can, even if that best feels like you are literally like a duck underwater, just trying to like not go under. It's the best you can. And the more that we can have this beautiful grace with ourselves and know that no matter what, no matter how many 10 minutes we add a day, we'll never be perfect, because that's not the goal. Perfection is not possible, right? My little guy said when he was 4, he's like, Mom, why is there even a word perfection when no one can be it? And that was one of the best things I ever heard. And so we want to not actually focus on the times we haven't done something or the times we forget to do something. We want to have such grace with ourselves and remind ourselves that more often than not, we're getting it right. We're absolutely doing the best we can. And that from there, know that the sky's the limit. And there is no value. There really isn't in being really hard on ourselves. Charlie's principal told me last week that there is a 10 times better effect of teachers just focusing on their students on what they're doing right. 10 times better. Never even mentioning what the student needs to work on has a better outcome, right? And so we have to offer ourselves that same level of commitment and love, right? Just know I'm doing it. I got this.
So giving yourself some grace
Yeah.
and know that every day is not going to be perfect. And more times than not, the more that you commit to, well, I should say this, the more that you commit to doing the work, more times than not, you're going to get it right. And you're going to attract those things that will be in alignment with your purpose.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then if people want to find me, it's Brandi with an I, Brandi B. Hudson, like the river .com. www.brandybhudson.com. You can find me there, and people can always reach out to me through the site. And I always get back to everybody.
So thank you for being here today. Thank you for walking us through this wonderful work. Again, I know you say you have not solved the puzzle, but you have planted the seed. And now our jobs are to water that seed, to take this information, put it into practice so that we can see our lives grow and become something that is amazing and something that we have probably thought we would never see for ourselves, or that we have seen for ourselves and we just didn't know how to get there. But doing the work will help us get there. So I appreciate you being here. Please come back. I definitely want you back for another episode.
I can't wait. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it this time.
So welcome. You are so welcome. That is it for this episode of Navigating Life After 40. You can find all of the details about Brandi in the show notes below. And also don't forget to join the Facebook group, Navigating Life After 40, so we can continue this discussion. I will see you all next time.
That's a wrap for this episode of Navigating Life After 40. I hope you enjoyed this conversation just as much as I did. If you love what you're hearing, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave me a review on your favorite podcast platform. This helps me to reach more amazing women like yourself who are trying to navigate this amazing life. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, keep living your best life.